Okay, we are live. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm really excited, innovators, to have you all here for a new show called Innovation Unscripted. I'm your host, Monica Kang, and I'm so excited to have you here. At Innovation Unscripted, I'm excited to have this conversation about really just understanding what does it mean to be an innovator. Just have honest understanding of how we can be more innovative and talk about that with innovators around the world. So, with that, I'm excited because May happens to be Asian Pacific Island American Heritage Month, and there's a big reason why the word is a big word. It means so much, and I'm so excited to celebrate Asian American identities and what it means to be an innovator who happens to be Asian Americans. And my hope is that through these conversations that we can have a more honest understanding. What does it mean to be innovative, creative, and how our identity influences? So with that being said, let's get going and say hello. Hey, Emily, great to join. And so as you're joining, please say hello in the chat. We want to hear where you're coming in from. With that, I want to get to know some of my friends here. So are you guys ready for this? So let's get started. So first, I would like to meet some of my friends.
Hi there, I'm Anlee Jordan, and I'm calling in today from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the founder of Accelerate the Climb, where we are innovating by creating intentional space as a community for first-generation professionals when they transition from college to career. It's nice to be here, Monica.
Hi, my name is Kanur Bahal, and I'm calling in from Seattle, Washington. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called MindHatch, where we are all about innovation and creativity using design thinking, using improv in the workplace, and facilitation. And we're currently newly rethinking diversity and inclusion and how creative methods like improv can be used to help that.
Hi, my name is Joshua Gao. I'm from New Hampshire. I'm co-founder and CEO of SAFE, and we are rethinking the way fires are being extinguished with the creation of technology that allows sound waves to extinguish fires.
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm calling from Berkeley, California. I am the creator and managing partner of Prototype Thinking Labs. We are reinventing corporate innovation and rethinking the way that design thinking teams do work to make work more user-friendly for the people who do it.
Hey, my name is Terry Wada. I am president and co-founder of a service design company, Collabo Creative, here in Indianapolis. And we are rethinking the way that businesses serve people because businesses need to serve people.
Hi, my name is Chi. I'm a mental health therapist in Northampton, Massachusetts. And I use creativity as a diagnostic tool in my work. I also use this unique approach that is influenced by Eastern holistic philosophies. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Surabhi. I'm from New York City, and I am rethinking the way that we work, in particular, how we work with each other. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Luminary, which is a women's collaborative hub and workspace dedicated to advancing women through community, as well as teach management and leadership. So all sorts of ways in which I am rethinking how we think about work.
Hi, my name is Ivy Kwong. I'm in Seattle. I'm a psychotherapist at beariv.com, and I'm rethinking cultural competence and care in the field of mental health.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Kim Colasius. I'm calling in today from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a gender equality specialist that works in traditionally male-dominated industries and sectors. At the moment, I'm leading an organization called Her Term, where we recruit and support progressive women candidates to run for office. And therefore, we are rethinking how to get more women elected into public positions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Warda Khalid calling in from Washington, D.C. I am rethinking the way that Muslims get civically engaged. I'm the founder and president of a national nonprofit called Polygon Education Fund. I also am rethinking foreign policy and work as a foreign policy and national security analyst, and also work as a fellow on Capitol Hill, adding diversity to the offices there.
We have one more. Just 1 second.
Go for it, Elise. I think you muted before.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I was still muted. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Elise Wang. I'm from Washington, D.C. I am the co-founder of Leprix, which is a marketplace platform that's focused in helping hundreds of designer vintage stores sell and source inventory online so that they can rethink how they can help grow their business in a modern way, and also help consumers shop sustainably and also save as well.
And so with that being said, I hope you heard we have amazing innovators here who just happen to be Asian American. And I thought it was so meaningful that we take the time to celebrate the voices, the different stories of being innovative and identity. Because frankly, for me, and I think many of us relate, that often when I first got really into innovation and really wanting to think differently, it was really hard because nobody else looked like me. It was really hard to find role models and just understanding how that influences. So with that being said, I'm going to now invite everyone together because we are going to have a group discussion. And so for folks online, please hang out, ask us questions, and let us know. And I see we already have some fan, Emily, Vaughn, and Wes is joining from different places in LA, Maryland, and Indianapolis. And so super pumped to be here. So with that being said, let's get started with some of our first questions. So thank you all for sharing. I think one of the things that I'm super inspired as I also rethink about what it means to be creative, innovative, and I'm someone who has worked in nuclear security, I think even the whole definition of what it means to be innovative is so interesting. And as each of you have shared, and I hope you're all inspired as you're watching this, is that there's just so many different ways. There's so many different ways to be innovative. There's so many different ways to kind of bring our value in. What I'm curious to hear is like, you know, what really inspired you to want to be innovative? And so I know I've asked if you can have a pen and paper, if you can just sketch, you know, and maybe an image or a word, you know, what really inspired you to want to be innovative? I'm going to put it out. And then I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to put the image up. 2, 3. So is everyone seeing this? Well, I'm curious to know, hello everyone, Alex for joining as well, if there is a word that comes to mind. Well, so for me to kickstart it, I would like to start with on my side. So Surabhi, I would love to start with you. Tenshin, tell me a little bit more what comes in mind for you. And after that, I would love to go to Terry.
Sure. So I often say that I grew up in this tension between onlyness and belonging. And then what that does is it makes you feel okay with discomfort. And from that discomfort comes these questions. What if? How might we? What could we do if? How can things be better? And so being able to sit with that tension really does open up spaces for creativity for me.
Did you want me to jump in? So I put my dad, and it's not an acronym for anything fancy. It's just my dad. So he's a crazy old Japanese man, and growing up, I think a lot of us just thought he was crazy. Well, there's seven of us kids. And we just thought he was crazy. He, you know, was putting a solar panel on his roof and making us use solar heated water back in the 80s. And I'm just thinking, when it rains, we don't have hot water. But as I grew up, what I realized was he was always progressive. And as crazy as his ideas were, it was inspiring for me to feel that I could do those things.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think, you know, many of us who's watching this and later on reflecting would also agree that even just from seeing that quick glimpse, you know, we're influenced by so many things. And sometimes it's both the gap. In my case, I was trying to represent the gap. And I saw somebody also saying lack of representation, how it influenced, but also helped shape. And so thank you both, Terry and Surabhi, for sharing that. To tie to that at the same time, it's also, you know, being innovative is often hard to describe. I'm curious for each one of you, when you often describe, these are the things I do, these are the things I empower people, what's often the first word that comes to mind, or an image? So I'll give you a second for you to illustrate that. And if we're ready, 1, 2, 3. If you can share yours. So I got a lot of different images. I would love to ask maybe Chi and Jay to share a little bit more about their story.
So I drew a tree because I believe it comes, naturally, organically, and we just have to listen to what we know, and yeah.
I drew a person standing at the edge of a cliff because to me, I think that the biggest thing that I talk about when I think about that is not being afraid of the truth. And so my story is that I'm autistic, and I grew up seeing the world very, very differently, perceiving different patterns, and always trying to kind of fit my brain into this other reality that never felt real for me. And then I found out that actually, like, the things that I were perceiving are things that other people don't perceive, that give me an edge in business and in product innovation. And just being able to say, like, this is what's honestly going on, even if it's not comfortable for everyone, so that we're all actually working on the real problem, has been transformative for me.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think, Ivy, was it correct that I saw a fire that you illustrated? Who had a fire illustration? Wait, you're on mute. Oh, it was a sun, but I'd love to still.
Fiery sun.
Please tell us more.
I think similar to Chi, there's just, I feel like if we're all born like bowls of possibility and light, and so much of the work is removing whatever might be blocking that flow. And so I know that just also earlier, just the mandatory nature of having to innovate, because
I think we're kind of having a little connection problem. This is part of the opportunity of also being live and working together. But to tie to that, I think what I heard with Ivy sharing is that, how it's important to think through that different aspects on that connectivity. So to tie that together, I want to dig a little bit deeper, right? Because if we were just going to talk about what it means to be innovative, I wouldn't actually even ask all of you to participate in this, because all of you have a lot of things on your plate. And so what I'm genuinely curious is, on top of that, being Asian American, I think we often speak about how our surroundings influences, it empowers in who we become, but also it helps us be a better version of who we want to be. And I think it's important to think about how our identity is shaped and how we want to innovate, as well as how we want to play a role in innovation, is influenced a large part by who we are right now. So Ivy, did you want to add final thoughts? I know we lost you a little bit.
I'm just going to work with some tech issues, and once I'm settled, I will rejoin. Just give me 1 sec.
Perfect. So in the time being, let me ask you now all the next question that I'm curious to learn more is, again, understanding how growing up, being Asian American, influenced the way we think about innovation. And, I think in our prep call, we talked a lot about failure. And let's be honest, being innovative requires us to constantly ideate. We have to do a lot of different things. And I know, if I may follow up with you, we had a great conversation on that. I would love if you can share a little bit more about, what is it that we can do to rethink about failure and what that means for Asian Americans, and how that has helped you and how you rethink about it.
Sure. I think I was a refugee from Vietnam. So coming over here, I felt a lot of responsibility of kind of living my life, not just for myself, but also for my family. Oops, sorry. And what they had done to give me this opportunity. And as a result, it almost makes you a little risk averse, because it's easier to know that I'm smart. If I work hard, I'll be able to achieve the definition of success. And what I've learned as I've gone through life now, a few decades post-college, is success is how you define it, and failure is actually meaning that you're trying to go outside of the scope of maybe what's comfortable and trying to achieve even beyond the box that you created for yourself. And to have the courage to fail means to have the courage to try and to achieve. And as a mother now, I've learned a lot of being able to put myself in my parents' shoes and understanding that what they've tried to give me is my happiness. And in order to do that, then I have to try for that so I can live as an example for my kids.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's so powerful to think about. It's really not just one time, but it has a ripple effect, and it influences us in how we decide to do what, not just for us, but for others and for your family. So thank you, Ellen, for doing what you do. Joshua, I want to actually go to you because I know that influences in how you're also thinking and how you're reshaping, but also thinking about what it means for the youth right now and how they think about innovation and rethinking about failure and everything. Could you share a little bit more?
Yeah, so I feel like in terms of innovation, I feel like there's so many like labels per se that people are expected to think this way. I suppose like being a high school student, I'm expected, to not understand this. Like, I don't have a PhD degree, so I'm expected to not understand these things. Being, Asian American, that puts other sorts of labels on me. So I suppose like being an innovator, part of it is not just being creative, being innovative, but really just being able to defy all expectations, defy all labels, and to just say like, I know what I want to do. I know the impact I want to make in this world, and I'm going to do nothing I'm going to do everything but stop to get there. So I suppose just like defying labels, that's a big part for me.
Thank you for sharing that. I know, and to connect to that, defying labels is a thing that all of us spoke of. And Jane, I want to hear your thoughts because you've defied labels not only for your current industry and the work that how you got into even gender equity right now, but even in how you're empowering females and how they think about politics in a different way. Could you share a little bit more how you're doing that and how you're not letting that failure and risk stop you from it?
Yeah, I think just kind of going back to a little bit about what you said about defying labels. I think that's such an important part because a lot of that actually is based on our appearance as Asian Americans, our appearance as a man or a woman, our sexuality. So whatever it is that the other person is seeing, that's how our labels are defined. And the work that I'm trying to do is how can we rethink, how can we defy, that definition of who I am based on another person's perspective. So on the work that I do with gender equality and right now, specifically in politics, it's really about telling the story. Yes, so she's a woman doing these things, but let's get to know her more. Where does her values come from? Where does her belief come from? What things that happen in her life really drives her and motivates her? And when we start digging into the stories of why people do what they do, you actually find that, I have a lot of common things with this person. I empathize, I relate. She is just like me. So that's how I think it.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know this ties quite closely, Warda, to your work because you're in Capitol Hill doing all of this. Tell us a little bit more, like what gives you the courage to speak up, share, and do the work you do and empower others?
Yeah, I think when I wrote earlier was a lack of representation, and I've seen how, right now where I'm working, the member that I work for is leads the Asian American Caucus, and anti-Asian xenophobia has been a really big thing related to coronavirus right now. And it's just so important for people to be pushing back, working together with other minority communities to make sure that, we are not allowing this to go on. We've had like 1,600 anti-Asian incidents in just the last month alone. So it's really important to be pushing from that perspective. And then, for me and my Muslim community, it's another marginalized community that has faced very similar things to what East Asians are going through right now. And it just goes to show that, like, if you don't have somebody there speaking out, yesterday we saw the Chinese, Trump was she was a journalist and he was like telling her to go ask China. Like, if she hadn't been in the room to push back, like that perspective would not have been shared. So I just think having representation, especially in the policymaking process where I work, is just really, really important so that when these things are happening, we are able to push back and say like, no, this is not okay.
Thank you for sharing that. And, this ties beautifully to one of the other topics. I've seen some memes about it. People have been joking about, is there no coincidence that we have Asian American Pacific Island Heritage Month and Mental Health Awareness Month at the same time? And, I know for you working on mental health and also empowering others, I would love to hear a little bit more from your side. How are you taking this time, whether it's not just this time, but in general, empowering Asian Americans and many others to rethink about what it means to take care of our mental health so that we get to Congress, we get to all these different places around the world to speak our values wherever that is.
Can you hear me okay now? All right, trying to get these tech issues. Yeah, so one of my specialties is Asian American mental health. And right now, more than ever before, there's an importance of just checking in to this community, this population, to see what's happening. There's been traditionally a lot of pressure to be productive and to do and to go. There's a meme floating around, a lot of the communities, like, if you don't do something new, learn a new skill, start a new business during the pandemic, then you're just lazy. And I think there's been so much pressure that's been passed on from just many of our parents who are immigrants. You have to do to survive. And so adopting that mindset now, there's a struggle because right now the world is in a collective state of trauma and we may not be able to do as we did before. And instead of forcing ourselves through and pushing, it's kind of a new concept for many Asians and Asian Americans to have to slow down and to check in with what self-care is, and looking at a lot of the systemic issues that have brought us to where we are now, and being able to get support when traditionally it's kind of like we keep everything in, just very insulated in our families, inside ourselves. It's really opening up new possibilities for support within the community and with professionals like therapists.
Thank you for sharing that. And I thought it was quite timely because one of the questions that we got from the audience, Wes, Kat, thank you, shout out to you. The question was there a struggle at all for any of the innovators here in embracing themselves as a creative, innovative person? And if so, what was that journey like? I would love to hear, maybe I'm going to open up the floor to see who would like to share to that question. If you can raise your hand, and then I'll have the floor. Yes, Kunal?
Yeah, I think I can share maybe the latter half of my journey in that. But there was this moment by this point 7 years ago where I was wanting to quit my corporate job and start MindHatch, the company I have now. And I remember when I was telling some of my friends, some who I'd known since I was a child, some who I'd known since graduate school, and I was telling them that, like, one of the reasons I was like looking to work for myself, and I said, I just don't think I'm that kind of South Asian person who's just gonna like obey authority and hierarchy for like any reason. And it was really like my friends, their reaction was like, of course you're not that person. You've never been that person, But I really kind of spent my whole life like doing quote unquote the right thing and being rewarded for it, And I think once I got into the workplace, like, God, 3 months into my working career, I realized I was not going to be rewarded for the things that I was rewarded for in high school, in college, in graduate school. And I realized a big reason why that was is because I'm a woman and because I'm brown, And so I think a big part of me kind of understanding my capacity and desire for innovation was learning kind of the hard way that doing the right thing wasn't going to work for me. And that, and also kind of like the people around you often know you better than you do, and so the things that I was a little late seeing in myself, my peers and my friends and my family kind of had always seen in me. So it seemed like a little bit of a foregone conclusion at that point. And it was a little bit of like a click of like, oh my gosh, yeah, okay, if you see this in me, then I shouldn't have doubt in seeing it in myself.
Yeah, I totally would build off of Kunor's experience there. So, I mean, I was raised in a Japanese household, very traditional, and I'm born and raised in Hawaii, which is all Asian cultures called together. And I didn't realize how much I guess pressure and the kind of impression that was there from all of that because there is expectation for you to be a doctor, a lawyer, right? Like that is there. It's just in the culture. And it took me a while to accept because it didn't come from my family. And I always thought I needed to be something like a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, some kind of profession. And it didn't happen until I was in college and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm just undecided, taking all these courses, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. And my mom actually told me, why don't you go into art? And I was like, well, that's not a real job. Why would I do that? You know, and it was just crazy because it never came from my own internal family pressure. It was all built here and all of my friends and everything around me. And it took, 25 years for my mom to tell me, you should look into art. You're a creative person. You can do that. And that was kind of an aha moment for me and how I overcame that. That's a great question. Thanks, Wes.
Thank you for sharing both of that. And tying to that, Alex made a good point, still connecting back to that mental health. I think, I would say actually having the courage to find yourself to be creative connects to your mental well-being. And so, I would go back to you because Alex made a comment about for mental health, and shout out to you. It is going well for him and taking one day at a time, positively keeping myself active by exercising, working out, and playing basketball. So great work, Alex. We'd love to hear maybe from other, going back to you, what are other tips, especially I think Asian American, on top of, what we just heard from Terry and Kunur, that there's a lot of other voices that beyond just doing those things, to take care of ourselves, to find our creative voice takes a bit of an extra toll and challenge. So please share us what we can do to find that identity faster.
Yeah, I love that there's been a listening to the body and to the system and to being active, it sounds like. So in this time and space, just kind of checking in with what is coming up, what is coming through, what needs to be expressed, and how can it be expressed. So whether it's needing to journal things, needing to move through your body, needing to express through art, whatever. And this is actually a really powerful way of processing emotions and processing the experience. And so being able to express it, move it, allow it to come through you in ways that are creative and maybe unexpected is definitely a possibility during this time.
Thank you for sharing that. Jane, I saw a hand. I know you wanted to add a point too.
Yeah, thanks. So just kind of going back to, embracing yourself as a creative and innovative. And it kind of also ties very well with what Ivy said in terms of like processing things, at your own pace. That's definitely been the case for me. Like, asked me 3 years ago, like if I would consider myself a creative, definitely not. And by the way, I'm in my 30s. So, you can consider yourself creative at any age group, I suppose. But I definitely didn't feel that way or think that way. And, there was really nobody like who I knew in my circle or in my network who was kind of going out and doing their own thing as a creative and, talk about themselves as an innovator. And so, it was really only recently until I got to know more people like through Innovators Box and also through Monica about, what it is to be innovator, what is it to be a creative, and just get really exposed to talking about it the way it has really helped me, embrace, that part of me.
Age does not define us. Thank you, Jane, for reminding us. And hey, Asian genes, look out all there. We're all going to look young forever. I have a photo of me, and I actually always start my presentation where like, this was me 10 years ago. I just look slightly older than me. So Jane, thank you for reminding that. I think often, to add to everything that's been shared, we just have, and I'm seeing the chat room booming on all of these comments, just circling back. Judy has mentioned that, love the point from Terry. I think one of the things as Asian Americans face as creative is the willingness to disappoint our parents. Let's talk about that, Judy. Great point. Kevin has also made a point about how, we've had to internalize so many external expectations and need to reclaim what's best for our own mental and emotional health, which is so true. And then, yes, connecting all of that together, it's just about, okay, how do we balance, whether it's age, mental health, creativity? Sometimes I feel like Asian American is like being a huge responsibility, but like, we can't change who we are. And so at the same time, what was really like humanizing when we had a group call was just all of you sharing how being, Asian American, whatever like that Asian country or culture is, how it actually also empowered you to be more innovative and creative in the way you are. So I'm going to pull this back up to all of you because let's bring this back up. Yes, going back to whether it's parental pressure, all of that, we'd love to share, like if you can raise your hand. Yes, Chi, going back going to you first to learn a little bit more, like what's something being Asian has actually helped us be more innovative?
Yeah. So for me, the first step was to accept that, well, maybe whatever choice that I make, it'll be right. There's no such thing as having the wrong choice. So that was the first thing. And allowing myself to define what, what's good for me or what's success for me, right? To answer that question about the parental expectation. And yeah.
Thank you for adding that. I heard also Warda.
Yes. So I think it's really interesting that we're doing this in Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, because actually a large percentage of small business owners are Asian American, and that's my dad included. And so growing up, pretty much my whole childhood, he had already started his own business. He was doing his own thing. And now granted, it was in the sciences, so it was like not in the political field, which I'm doing right now, but it always kind of gave me like, okay, like you can do things outside the box if you want to, like you can start your own gig, you can start your own thing. And so very early in my career, I started consulting work. I started this nonprofit. I started, I was like co-founding organizations in grad school. Like it was just very natural to me. And even when I was thinking recently, like, oh, wow, one of my like minors in undergrad was entrepreneurial leadership. And like these pieces, I think it's just in your subconscious kind of as part of being Asian is like being innovative, being creative, defining your own path. A lot of us are the children of immigrants. I am, and just seeing how they come here and define themselves and just find their path forward. It's kind of intrinsic in us to, kind of trying to forge these pathways that we want to follow.
Yeah, so similar here. My parents are immigrants. And, at that time, in hindsight, I watched them go through a lot of struggles. When they were trying to move into a house in Boston, in the Boston area, there was actually literally a petition from the neighborhood that they would burn their house down with their baby in it. And this was like before the Fair Housing Act in the 1970s. So I'm probably the oldest one here. I saw them, they came to the States, they wanted to, for grad school, they wanted to get, super professional jobs, and it was hard. They literally had doors shut in their face. So they were forced to be innovative and start their own business. So I grew up watching them work their butts off with their small business. And that's part of why I love what I'm doing, because I'm helping other small businesses. It was hard. And of course, they wanted me and my sisters to become a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or a pharmacist because they didn't want us to struggle like they did. I didn't understand that when I was younger. I think it was really, a rude awakening, later in my life when I realized they just really wanted us to be safe and, able to sustain for ourselves. And I went through a lot of struggles with them. I had so many arguments with them because I really didn't like biochem, and I didn't want to become a doctor, and I bombed biochem anyways. And, so I went to the lawyer path. I did that. I checked off the box. And I think, it made me happy to make them happy, but I wasn't deep down happy, inside. I did meet some great people during that career path and that journey. And I didn't hate what I did, but there was something else. And so, when I decided to take the leap to start my own business, I felt like I was like a big failure. I felt like I was failing them. I was failing their expectations. I was failing, you know, what their friends would think of them and me. And it was a lot of pressure. But once I took that leap, you know, I think they were actually supportive. They went from, you know, okay, I'm proud my daughter went to law school and, you know, was a litigator, to I'm proud of my daughter for starting her own business. And even though she's selling like used shoes and used, you know, bags, but yeah, I think they were just scared for me that I would suffer, you know, and struggle like they did. And they didn't want to see any of their kids go through that. But yeah, like you guys, like a failure has changed. The definition of failure has changed. It was the scariest thing to fail, you know, when I was younger. It was like the ultimate, you know, disaster. It was devastating. But now I've embraced, you know, seeing that failures actually could lead to success, and it's how you define it, you know, for yourself. Yeah, so that's those are my 2 cents.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, it brings so much insights, right? I think, and we're having the whole chat room going on wildfire because they're like, yes, this all resonates so much. And, you know, it's hard because I think I want to make sure I hear from a few other folks on this topic because, you know, what I hope you heard from just these few comments and conversations, there's just so many layers. And I think often, you know, I'm so, you know, we all have different friends in different circles, but I think there's just something so special that we can share with our own culture. And, you know, I'm so grateful that we can celebrate this and talk about this, that let's honor, there's a reason why some of these challenges, and like, thank God we had parents who looked out for it, and that part of the culture actually empowered us to be who we are. And hey, we're so grateful. Let's celebrate it and like look at, as a result, what we're doing in the decisions we do for our families onward. And so I want to pass this now over to Surabhi. Yes.
So one of the things when Elise was talking made me think about one of the ways that I get strength is knowing that my parents in particular, there's a lot that I can do to disappoint them, but there's very little that I can do to have them disown me. And so let's just say that is, you know, something that I think a lot of us have is the strength of parents who are going to support us. They may not always believe in us. At least for me, that has been true, that they've always been supportive. Their idea of what my success looks like has certainly been different than what my idea of success might look like. But their support has actually been foundational in me in allowing me to take risks and allowing me to know that that risk is okay. And so while it may also come with some tussles every now and again, it also comes with an incredible security and I think foundation to take that risk. And I think that's really important because we often hear these stories about families being maybe overbearing or very directive. And all of that may be true, but they're also incredibly supportive and can be incredibly supportive. And that's been my experience. The other thing that's really helped me take a risk is that I've often been the only person in a room who looks like me. And often the one saying something unpopular, and sometimes that's lonely. And when you can get strength from that place of loneliness and you can use that to your advantage and have agency because of it, to speak up when things don't feel right, that is an incredible source of power. And so I feel like I have that power because I also have the foundational support of my parents. So I think that that's important to see, like, where can we live in the both? So it can be both, and we can both have families who want us to do certain things, and we can have families who support us when we do things that are maybe not what they had dreamed of, and bring them back to just knowing that we're happy and that that's enough.
I have a slightly different, almost more technical perspective that I found on the advantage that Asian culture brings. So I work in corporate innovation, which is my company. We work with Fortune 500 companies, like top tier global firms, to build like revolutionary new products, right? And so one of the things that I found working in like corporate innovation and product innovation has been that there's this huge advantage that I've noticed that I've had, that my Asian teammates have had, and often that my Asian colleagues in the client organization have had, where culturally, like we just learn to be a lot more meticulous. And we learn to be really, really sensitive to other people and to be really sensitive to the cultural context. And so when you're actually in the position of creating something new for a customer base, that's a huge, huge advantage, because it means that we often are able to process a lot more information, a lot more meticulously, and get a lot more done, a lot more accurately for the user, and doing it the right way for the customer, and creating that thing that has a level of thoughtfulness, because it's the thoughtfulness that we've been culturally kind of indoctrinated, right, to apply to everyone around us our whole life. And eventually, like after years of doing this, I realized this weird statistic, which is that almost half of our main counterpoints in our client organizations, which would be the senior executives, probably like the innovation second in command level of these client organizations that we're working with for our clients, are Asian women. And that blows my mind, because it's not a stereotype that I've had of our own people before, right? Like I think of, Asians are technical, Asians are whatever, but like leading design and product innovation at all of these massive firms right now is a huge slew of executive Asian women. And I actually think that there's something transformative that's going to happen in the next decade, where Asians and Asian women especially are going to reinvent design globally across the world. And I am super excited to see like what we are able to bring to them.
I love that, G, that's like amazing. One of the things that I think I have the benefit of is kind of being a little further ahead in life. I've been out for about 25 years now. I have a family, I have teenage tween kids. And so I have the perspective not only as a child growing up here in America with immigrant parents, but also now as a parent trying not to raise the entitled kids that my parents were trying to give to me. And, I can look back now and see, it's so funny. I really have thought I was trying to grow up in this box, like I was saying before, of what the definition of success was. But when I look back, I actually think that the reason why I've had success is because the innovation and creativity is almost internalized in who we are. And it's a matter of looking at it from a different perspective. And, you look at my parents who came over here when they were in their 20s, and they had already lived a whole life, and they basically had to reinvent themselves when they came here. That's innovation, right? As immigrants, whether it's refugees or anybody who's choosing immigration, the ability to dream and believe in yourself, that you can go somewhere and start from scratch, that's innovation, right? My grandmother and my mother, they both became entrepreneurs in their professional careers, in addition to being strong domestic female figures in the home. That's innovation, to do both of those things at the same time and do it well, so that they could also have a semblance of independence in their roles at home, as well as just being a mom, right? So that they could have a little bit of power in a different way than you might have imagined as a prototypical Southeast Asian woman. So now that I look back, I can see those seeds of who I am, and they're a big part of what empowers me to believe that I can break out of the box and the definition of success, redefine success, and live as an example for my kids to hopefully look back and see that in me as well, to empower themselves.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I could definitely really relate to that. And kind of going back, Monica, to what you were originally asking, like, what about being Asian has really helped me in my journey? I would say that definitely seeing my parents, and they're immigrants, and the determination that they've had. Like, I know my mom told me this story of like when she was young, she told her parents, like, someday when I grow up, I'll have hot and cold water coming out of the faucet at the same time. Because back then it was either you get scalding hot water or cold water. And just that determination where like now she's in America, and now, that's a standard. And it's just that determination that has kind of brought her through those years. So like now I'm kind of thinking about like, I feel like there's so many good things about being Asian. So I'm thinking like, how can we empower and shift the mindset about being Asian? And that kind of makes me think of this thing I've been working on lately. I'm part of this organization called the 100K Mass Challenge, or not necessarily part of, but I help them out a bit. But essentially what we do is we build these authentic connections by exploring how we can take off our masks. So we all have these kind of facades that we project, these better versions of ourselves that we like to show others. And the Mass Challenge really just encourages you to take off that mask and be vulnerable, authentic. And on one of these workshops that I was running last week, someone said this amazing quote. She said, authenticity is coupled with fearlessness. And that just like, that hit home for me, because part of being, I feel like Asian is to just finding your identity and like, you know, who you are. You have to be fearless, and you have to just like, you know that who you are is good. And I guess like you're yourself, and that's what kind of, that's a part of you that adds so much value to this world. So being fearless, to be authentic, is what truly can drive change in the world, I believe.
My head is spinning with so many thoughts inspired by what has come before. To An's point about how like innovation and creativity is like connected to like the ability to start over, right? And I just wanted, like, I had a thought sprung to my mind in the moment where I was like, yeah, okay, I'm like the innovator in my immediate family, and I've lived in pretty much every major American city, would move at a drop of a hat, really felt I was at my best when I was starting over. Really, I really like treasure those times. And then like my older brother, who is a doctor, like has lived in Chicago since he was 18 and has never left. So I feel like there's some connection there, being like me being the risk taker and moving all over the place, and my brother being in one place for like 20 plus years and becoming a doctor eventually. There's a certain mindset that might be linked up there. And then Jay, I know you talked about the like meticulousness that happens to be a current in Asian American culture, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, forced on by our parents, who knows, but it does exist. And it's really connected to like this idea of perfectionism to me. And I referenced earlier how, I was always rewarded for doing the right thing, high school, college, grad school, right? And I think a part of that, so my own story into kind of becoming an improv performer, and then after that, connecting it to my work, was that I signed up for an improv class in college when I was 19. It was an 8-week class. I went to the very first class session, and I got so scared of being bad at it that I never went back. I was so scared to learn that I would be bad at this thing that I thought I should do might be connected to my career. At the time, I was like working in TV comedy, and I never went back. I'd rather not discover that I was bad at it than go through the whole class. If I'd gone to the second class, I would have learned, okay, yeah, you're going to suck at this for 10 years before you're any good. And that's like the journey everyone goes through in improv. But I think at 19, I was super perfectionist. But I think in addition to that, I learned with hindsight that not only was I used to being good at things, but I was used to being good at things because I was self-selecting things I would be good at, right? And I wasn't really truly challenging myself, right? And so hindsight kind of gave me that. And that's why 8 years after that, I got back into improv, because it was like this huge monkey I had to get off my back. It was this, as I often say, like I had to settle an old emotional score with myself, and I did, and I ended up becoming addicted to it, and really, with 8 years of more life experience, was no longer that perfectionist and was willing to fail and take delight in learning something that was challenging and that was going to be kind of like a wonderfully Sisyphean task of like, you're never going to be 100% good at this art form. So that's kind of like my experience. It's weird, like people tend to think that when you're young and youthful, you're more fearless. But at least in my personal life, it's been the inverse. When I was young, I was more scared of failure. And now I'm kind of like, bring it on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to take a moment to touch on ageism. Actually, growing up in an Asian household, there's a lot of, it's going to be too late. You're going to be too old. You better hurry. Like it always felt like it was a rush. It was a race. And let me just tell you, like, there is always time. Like, I promise you, there's always time. I switched from the law track to becoming a therapist. You know, there have been so many, like Vera Wang, I think there's a whole thing going around her lately about how she's in her 70s. She looks amazing. Yes, Asian genes. And also, like, she designed her first wedding dress at the age of 40 because Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren had turned her down. And so there's actually research that proves that most entrepreneurs are over 40, and actually entrepreneurs who start later are more likely to be successful because of all that life experience that they bring, like Kuner said. And so I think that it's such a powerful, at any moment in your life, you have the opportunity to do something different. Every day you wake up with breath. It does not matter what your age is. And so just again, with the whole Asian pressure of like, you have to be this age and make this much by this time, and your life should look like this at this point. You know, there's such like a, at 25, you should be this, at 30, you should look like this, at 40, there's just, if you could lovingly throw that out the window and just honor your own path. It is not a race, it is your own personal journey. And listening to and following where you are led, and trust it will happen at the right time.
I'm having goosebumps. Anyone else having goosebumps as they're listening? Thank you all so much for sharing all these enriching stories. You know, I think gives me a reflection that I just wish I heard of these when I was younger. Like, I just wish we had more stories like this. And, you know, I was sharing even for folks who are live, you know, right before we went live, I was sharing that one of the things I like to do in the show is I always like to share quotes when I wrap up. I still have a few more minutes, so we're not done yet. So hang in there all. But I found that it was really hard to find enough stories and just these conversations. And, you know, I hope all of you are being enriched and just being reminded that what I hope you're hearing from all these stories is that there's just no one way of what it means to be fearless. There is no one way what it means to be innovative. And there is no one way of who you look and what age or what background you come from to bring value to your communities. And so in the next phase, I want to learn a little bit more because all of you are bringing value to your communities. And if you can, let's see, pull out another piece of paper. I know two things I've asked is if you can show a random object that influenced and made you rethink about your identity. If you can pull out those objects in front of you, I'll say 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. If you can pull it up on the screen for us, what are the random objects that influence our identities? I want you all in the audience to take a look, right? Take a look at all these right now. Oh, the fire flame was to Joshua earlier. Yes. So all these look at, and I mean, yes, hold that closely. I hope you're seeing that these are all different. Thank you all very much. They're all so different. And what I hope that inspires you to think about as you heard about these stories is that there's really no one way of being inspired, to be curious, to find inspiration. And, you know, if you forget, just rewind this few seconds to see again, what are the objects that everyone shared? Because that's a reminder that, you know, we can look at whether it's the chopsticks or the fire image. And I wish we could do like a longer episode because now I want to learn about all of these, but, you know, I'm going to challenge you all. You have all their names. Like, I want you to follow up with them, ask them, you know, why did you have a chopstick? You know, I want to hear about what the fire story is behind, or like, you know, why you had that food. Did I see food? Was that kimchi or something? You know, ask them questions back, because that's such a more powerful way. We have conversations starting with curiosity. And so to tie that all together, what I want us to sit on is going back to the question of action. Because at the end of the day, what I love about all of you and what you do is you're not all talkers, you're walkers of what you talk of. And so I'd love to maybe get a final piece of advice from each one of you. What's one piece of action and advice that you have to share? And maybe we can go in the same order we did the introductions. So again, the question is, what's a piece of action and advice that you have to share for our audience so that they know what they can do to be innovative?
Sure. You know, my action would be to connect. I think that there is a real opportunity, and that's why I created Accelerate the Climb, is the idea of creating a community of people to help each other so that everyone's journey doesn't have to be as lonely as it was for me as a first-generation college student, just going off to college and not knowing. If you connect up, but then also it's really important to connect back as well, to give back and lift as you rise. And you can create your own community you can be part of it, but you can also bring people into it. And that's what my advice would be. Your journey, as like we're looking at this screen right now, you might feel alone in it, but if you look for it, you will find your people, you will find your community, they will lift you up, and it will feel great to empower other people as well in your actions.
If I can sum up what I'm about to say, I would say my advice is to just say yes as often as possible. Get as many experiences, however small or big, mundane or adventuresome, that you can. I a few years back, it dawned on me that I had kind of unknowingly design thunk my own career and life, because I was always pursuing lots of different things like internships, work, volunteerism. I was always a seeker in trying to figure out, okay, what did I want to do with my life? And I was often more concerned with like who I was going to be in the future rather than what I was going to be. And so I think I gained a lot from just rapid prototyping and experimenting, you know, with my own life and especially my career. So I would say just say yes, get experiences, learn from them, like, you know, be intentional about it, and like learn what your trade-offs are as quickly as you can, because then I think that you're gonna get to where you want to be more quickly then.
For me, I'm kind of going to go back to the quote I actually mentioned earlier, that authenticity is coupled with fearlessness. And that just means so much to me, because I feel like when we're talking about like the way, for example, like Asian Americans are treated in this world, we're talking about this culture change that we want to see. And the shift of culture is very difficult to achieve, but the only way to achieve it is for everyone one by one to begin changing. When people begin to change, then people begin to see that, oh, this is the new norm. And that's when the culture shift happens. So I suppose you need to be authentic and fearless, and you need to be fearless. Like in order for the culture change to happen, you need to be the change. I suppose that's kind of what I'm getting to. And in order to be the change, you need to be fearless and authentic.
I think especially as Asians, it can feel transgressive for us to take up a lot of space, especially filling that space with something that feels negative. So I think mine is like, it's okay to be angry. And if you're really, really angry, it might be because you're right.
Oh, I love this. Everyone has such great actionable tips. And mine actually builds off of, I think, what Kunur as well as Joshua had said. I'm going to say that realize that the permission has to come from you. So I feel like, and this is my perspective on Asian culture in general, maybe it's more Japanese culture, but I feel like we're a very permission-based culture, and that's why we're known to be polite. We ask for permission. And it took me a long time, probably 35 years, to realize that permission has to come from me. And I had to hear it from my mom to go into college, you know, to pursue art. I had to hear it from other people around me that I have the permission to be more of me, but I'm still realizing that I have to give myself that permission. And that's where it all starts, because that's where then you can go and be authentic and say yes, right? Because I gave myself permission. So give yourself permission.
Yeah, and to actually build on what Terry is saying, I think that we all have the ability to be creative, because we all know how to problem solve every single day. And so it's just letting ourselves listen to the voice that we have inside ourselves, or the spirit of what we want to do or what we want to be. And if we can't hear it because it's too loud or there's too many distractions, you know, find a way for you to hear it. You know, there's no wrong way. There's no right way, so to speak. Everyone's different. And that's what I encourage you to do.
So much of what Terry said is what I was going to say around asking yourself. So I'll ditto that, but I will also say, ask other people for help. It's not a solo sport necessarily. This is also about asking for help, asking to connect with somebody else, following up with that person, and then knowing your own story when you're talking with them and making that ask, and really being comfortable with, can you connect me to somebody? This is what I want to do, and taking up that space and asking. I think it's a skill, it's a muscle that we can all build.
My invitation to you is to give you permission to play, like make and create and protect time to play. Play is how we learn about ourselves and each other in the world. There's no like goal or things you're working towards. Like follow your curiosity, follow your joy, play in the space of infinite possibility. And that again can be deeply healing, deeply expressive, incredibly creative, and allow you to explore and discover things you might not otherwise have. So play.
So many good points. A lot of it kind of combines, what I want to say. But I guess my take is ask and take. If you want to be on a panel, volunteer yourself. If you want to be a part of a project, volunteer yourself. Because at the end of the day, nobody's saving a seat for you at the table. You got to take it. Or bring a chair, whatever it is, and just pave the way for yourself, because nobody else will do it for you. You have to do it for yourself.
I love that so much. My advice is to just start. People ask me all the time, like, oh, I want to get into writing, or how did you get into blogging? I just started. I literally called up the outlet and I was like, hey, I have newspaper writing experience. Can I start this blog for you? And they're like, yes. Of course I had to send over some information, so you have to be somewhat prepared, but like, just ask, just start. I know many of us in the Asian culture, we talked about this earlier, being risk averse. I started in a very risk averse way. I ended up changing my entire career, which is extremely risky, but I haven't looked back. But I started by volunteering on the side of my day job and starting to explore different opportunities and seeing what I was interested in, to the point where my entire schedule was being consumed by all this stuff that I was loving doing outside of work. And if I hadn't tried it, I wouldn't have known. I would have just been sitting there thinking, well, maybe, and the decision to leave would have been even riskier. So my advice is to start and to try to get as much experience as you can in the areas that you're interested in.
That's awesome. I'm going to play off of that, to just start, but don't be afraid to pivot. And pivot is such a, kind of a corporate word, but it applies to your own personal identity, your passions, and pivoting is healthy. I used to think pivoting was failure, but it really is just fine-tuning who you are or whatever you're doing, and improving. And it's okay if you made a right turn to completely turn around and make a left turn. That's pivoting, and it could lead to great things. So believe in yourself.
And to tie that back to all of that, I would also say it is so important to make time to just start and be you. If all of that, what you heard, is not done in you and where you are and how you organically feel, then it's not your own voice. And we need to have more of your original voices out there. All of what I hope you all heard is that they're speaking in their own voice. They took the time to navigate. They thought about it. They went through the struggles. We still are every single day in different forms, but we're focusing on how we step into that each stepping stone, one step at a time. And so as we wrap up, I'd love to see, as we bring everyone back to the screen, share us, if you can write in one word that you want to live more this year as, so that you can be a better innovator. Maybe a word or image. So if you are ready, we are ready to go. It's a word in how you want to live to be a better innovator in your own way. So ready? 1, 2, 3. And guys, I want you to all take a look. Look at how many different ways in how you can live more limitlessly. Relax, being bad, brave, self-care, giving back, trees, heart, peacefully. And is that Prague? Am I reading that, Joshua, correctly?
Pray.
Pray, yes, pray, gracious, and tuned in. So thank you all very much, Robert. So excited to have you all. Group high five and hugs. I hope this has helped all of you and be inspired and really taking a moment to pause and think about like, wow, okay, I get a better sense of what it means to be creative. It's not just one box definition. It's not one path. But hey, by the way, there are so many amazing innovators who just happen to be Asian American. You are not alone. So if there's any other message that you come across, please just check this out. Share this with other friends. And because there are so many innovators, we're having a second show. So please join us again next week. I'm going to have new Friends of Innovators. And as we wrap up, I thought it would be great to tie in some quotes for perspective. You know, as another Asian American who happened to be a leader, Indra Nula said, an important attribute of success is to be yourself, never hide what makes you you. And I think, you know, even Eva Chen, who's the director of fashion partnership at Instagram, made a great point. So much of my personality has been embracing my story. And if you embrace your story, then that's where you get your power. What makes you unique is actually what makes you better. And I think that's one of the core things that I walked away. I'm excited that this is recorded because I'm going to watch this back for my self-therapy myself. But thank you all so much. Thank you for all being you. And thank you all for joining online, for sharing your gift of being creative. So stay tuned. We'll be back. This is Innovation Unscripted. As you see, we just had a raw conversation because we need more of this, because being creative and innovative is not just one way. So stay tuned for more. This is Monica King, your host, and we will be back again. Yay!